What a weekend we had of college football this past Saturday. The entire top 10, with the exception of Alabama, either lost or struggled in a win. So a big shake of the top 10. It is just getting closer and closer to the reveal of the first college football playoff committee rankings. I look forward to that. That's about 2 weeks away. But before we get to that, let's get to week 8. And I know week 7 just was not good at all, with that huge shakeup and the entire top 10, with the exception of Alabama, struggling. A 4-6 mediocre record. I believe that's the worst record in the history of this channel. But there's only one thing you can do about that, is to try to improve on it. So let's at least try to have a winning record this week. I feel like that could be the plan. But on the bright side, we did go 4-1 against the spread this week, so that is pretty good. Only thing we missed was UCF couldn't cover the -4.5. But Michigan State plus 13.5 and Baylor plus 14. Those two Superdog picks, those worked out this week. I almost wanted to pick Michigan State to win outright last week, and I kind of regret doing that. And speaking of Michigan State, our first matchup to predict this week, number 6 Michigan versus number 24 Michigan State. The Battle of the Michigans. And I do think an upset is going to happen in this game. I just think Michigan State just has the Wolverines' number in the last handful of seasons. And Jim Harbaugh does not have a good record when it comes to rivalry matchups. Whether if it's Ohio State or Michigan State, Jim Harbaugh doesn't have a good record at all against teams that really matter in the big games. So Jim Harbaugh, I think his legacy and his hot seat will... I think Jim Harbaugh honestly is on the hot seat, whether it's going to be this year or maybe next year or the year after that. He's going to be on the hot seat at some point. In fact, he probably was on the hot seat at the beginning of the season, and he would probably be gone if the Wolverines weren't winning games right now. Because Michigan just can't seem to beat good teams. But they had a dominating performance against Wisconsin last week. But in games that actually matter, when we're talking the Penn States and the Michigan States and the Ohio States, Jim Harbaugh and Michigan, they just crack under pressure. And I think this happens again, especially with Michigan State pulling off a big upset win on the road against Penn State last week. And they come back home looking to pull off another huge upset against a top 10 program. And I think they do it this time around as well. I got the Michigan State Spartans pulling off the upset. Michigan State wins this one, and Michigan gets eliminated from playoff contention. But by the way, a lot of teams got eliminated last week. Washington's eliminated. Colorado's probably eliminated because I just don't think Colorado will even have the schedule. Even if they won out and won the Pac-12, I still don't think they would get in. So I do think we still have about maybe 12 or 13 teams fighting over a couple spots. We'll kind of go more in depth about it once we start getting the playoff committee rankings, because if teams keep losing like this, this could be a time where either they put in a group of 5 team or they have no other choice but to put in a 2-loss team. So I think there's 2 things the committee does not want to do. And that's, they don't want to put in a group of 5 team, or they don't want to put in a 2-loss team. So this could be the year where they have to make a choice. And it's going to be interesting to kind of catch up on that. Well, to kind of talk about it over and over again. It's going to be a very interesting topic to go over once we get those playoff committee rankings every Tuesday night. So it's going to be a long fight to the finish. But especially if someone like Michigan or Oklahoma lost a second game, but they still managed to win a conference championship, we will see. But there's still plenty of teams in the hunt. But if we keep seeing teams falling, maybe a 2-loss team could get in. But moving on to picks, that's kind of another topic for another day. We got to move on to our picks. Number 9 Oklahoma versus TCU. Oklahoma coming off their bye week, and they're coming off the heartbreaking loss in the Red River rivalry to Texas. I think the Sooners, I think they play the chip on their shoulder. This could be the mentality that they had last year. Exactly the same mentality when they lost to Iowa State. They just continued to win out. They won and won and won. So they eventually won out, won the Big 12, made it to the college football playoff. This could be the same mentality that the Sooners have this time around. Although it might be a little bit harder for them to recover from this because they did lose to a rival. Well, they did lose to their rival in Texas in the Red River rivalry. But Oklahoma was kind of lucky to even have a chance to make it that close because they were down by 21 in the fourth. So, if Oklahoma wins out, I think they'll make the college football playoff. In fact, there's a bunch of teams that control their own destiny, and we will talk about that at a later date. But Oklahoma is one of the many teams that are in control of their own destiny right now. Oklahoma wins out, they should be in. But I've got the Sooners winning this week, maybe even by a big margin. Because TCU, there hasn't really been that many flashes of TCU. I really do think that second half against Ohio State could have been the breaking point of their season. But we'll see if TCU can compete with Oklahoma. But I think the Sooners win by a big amount of points. Next we have number 20 Cincinnati, who is surprisingly undefeated still, versus Temple. And there is a handful of group of 5 teams that are still undefeated. UCF, Cincinnati, and South Florida. So, not only are we looking at the college football playoff race, but we're looking at the group of 5 race as well. Because the highest ranked group of 5 team will get an automatic bid into a New Year's 6 game. So this is going to be not only a fight to the finish to make the college football playoff, but a fight to the finish to make a New Year's 6 game. But I think Cincinnati wins this one. I haven't really watched much of Cincinnati, but it's kind of nice to see new teams in the rankings. At least teams that you haven't seen in a long time in the rankings. I think the last time we had Cincinnati in the rankings was, I think, 2007 or 2008. But Cincinnati wins and they remain unbeaten. Next we have Colorado, who suffered their first loss this season last week on the road at USC, going on the road to number 15 Washington. And I think Colorado unfortunately drops 2 in a row. I just think Washington, they have a chance to win the Pac-12, but not to make the college football playoff. I honestly think the Pac-12's playoff chances are now done, with the exception of Oregon. I feel like Oregon can still make the college football playoff, but something just tells me the Ducks are going to lose again at some point, but I just don't know where yet. So I think the Pac-12's playoff hopes are pretty much gashed at this point. But I think Washington wins the game. Next we've got Memphis versus Missouri. Both of these teams are coming off a loss. Missouri getting blown out by Alabama, and Memphis losing a heartbreaker to UCF, which Memphis seemed to dominate the game in the first 3 quarters, but they just let the game get away from them in the fourth. They had a chance to win the game, but the receiver couldn't get out of bounds. And I think Missouri wins this one. I just think this loss that Memphis had last week, I just think it was kind of a heartbreaker. It was just a gash, thinking that you were so close to pulling off an upset against the top 10 team in UCF. But compared to Missouri's, they lost to number 1 Alabama. And losing to someone like Alabama, you kind of learn some stuff. You kind of learn that you may have lost a team that was better than you. The best you can do is try to be better than the team you play next week. And I think that's the mentality that Missouri is going to have. I, in fact, think this game is probably going to be a high-scoring matchup. I think there's going to be a lot of points in this one. But I think Missouri will win this matchup and put up about maybe 45 points on Memphis. Next, we got number 1 Alabama versus Tennessee. This is this rivalry between Alabama and Tennessee. Tennessee is just looking for another win, well, another big win after pulling off an upset against Auburn last week. But unfortunately, they're playing Alabama. although it is kind of a tough play to play in Rocky Top, I think Alabama finds no problems with it. But it is going to be interesting. What is the situation with Tua Tagovailoa as he had to leave the game in the third quarter last week against Missouri with a knee injury? So it's going to be interesting to see if the quarterback race is going to open up again. We'll see if Tua can play, or we'll see if Jalen Hurts is going to get the start. But either way, I think Alabama wins the game. I think you put in a third-string quarterback, and Alabama will at least win at the very worst by 7. So I think Alabama wins no matter who the quarterback is. Next, we've got number 12 Oregon versus number 25 Washington State. Washington State is surprisingly in those rankings. They're just very quiet. They could be a team that could maybe make some noise down the line. And the Ducks coming off a big win in overtime against Washington. And I think the Ducks continue to kind of go on this winning streak a little bit. I think Oregon, well, if you're a fan of the Pac-12, let's just be honest. Oregon's your last hope for a chance at the College Football Playoff. And I think the Ducks will be able to get it done. Justin Herbert, he looked pretty solid against Stanford, but he didn't look the best last week. But Oregon was good when it mattered, and that was in overtime. And I think the Ducks carry this momentum from last week and translate to another win here. Even though it's a road game, all road games are tough, but I think the Ducks will get it done. Maybe they won't win it in a dominating fashion, but I think they will get the win. They will win where it counts, and that's going to be at the end of the game. I like the Ducks. Next, we got number 22 Mississippi State versus number 5 LSU. LSU is coming off just a beating to Georgia. They just beat up Georgia last week. LSU's back in the top 5. Just what a difference a week makes. LSU, another one of those teams that controls their own destiny. We'll see how they do against Alabama in a couple of weeks. But I think LSU gets the win here. LSU will get another chance to get a victory over a ranked team. I think they get their 4th win against a ranked team this season. Despite the loss to Florida, I don't think it's going to hurt them that much, especially if Florida keeps on winning games. I think even if Florida even went out of the top 25, even if Florida lost like 2 more games, I don't think it'll bother LSU that much, considering it was a road game and it's very hard to play in the swamp. Maybe if a couple different things go differently in that game against Florida, maybe LSU wins this game. But I think LSU will get the win here. I think they're going to kind of redeem themselves from a couple weeks ago to get another win over a ranked team. I've got LSU win this matchup. Next, we've got USC versus Utah. This kind of be an interesting matchup because could USC start improving after that win last week against Colorado? Could USC start to get better towards the end of the season? And could USC be a spoiler to somebody like Notre Dame at the end of the season? We'll see what happens. And Utah, they're coming off a big win against Arizona, even though it's just Arizona. A win is a win, but they did beat Stanford the week before. So it's almost impossible to pick in this one. I think this game actually will go down to the wire. But I think USC wins in the very end. I just think it's ideal that USC wins this late. Maybe a JT Daniels touchdown within the last 2 minutes of the game. I think USC wins by 3 points. And finally, your game of the week, number 16 NC State versus number 3 Clemson. And boy, is this going to be a good one. The last time that these two teams played in Death Valley. Or Howard's Rock, or however you want to kind of determine it. NC State could have beaten Clemson. They could have gashed Clemson's national championship chances. But the special teams messed them up at the very end. And Clemson, they had about 4 or 5 turnovers that day. So, if NC State wants to win this game, they've got to force turnovers on the Clemson team. They've got to make Clemson face some adversity. If they can get an early lead on them, take the crowd out of it, it could be what could prevail them to win this game. But in the end, though, I think Clemson wins this one. I don't think they blow them out. I think this is going to be a very close game. I think Clemson wins. I think they win 27-21. I think it's going to be a close game from start to finish. But I think Clemson's defense is going to step up and rise to the occasion in the trenches. And I think Clemson gets the win and keeps their undefeated season and college football playoff hopes alive. So those are my Week 8 college football predictions. Comment your picks down below. Also like, share, and subscribe. I will see you next time. Have a wonderful day or night whenever you're watching, and we'll see you soon.